Sacre bleu, I am a lover, not a fighter. I surrender. Probably one of the most recognizable rifles from any video game. What we have here is a rifle that I've really wanted to get my hands on for a long time. If you're not familiar with it, this is the Famas F1. There are other models. This is kind of the model you think of when you think of the rifle that was adopted by the French military, although it is being replaced now. And it is a bullpup. It is chambered in 5.56. It is a lever delayed blowback design using proprietary mags, and there are so few examples of this rifle in the US. We have been trying to get our hands on one forever, but Ian McCollum actually put a curse on us and we couldn't get one for like, how long, Micah? Like
probably 20 years.
Yeah, 20. The curse lifted and now we have one in our possession. And as always, we're going to do a review of the Famas F1 from a what, Micah?
Shooter's perspective.
Before we get into it, we have to thank the biggest sponsor of the channel, who is the who, Micah?
Sonoran Desert Institute.
That's right, no Charles. So if you're looking to get your start in gunsmithing, they are the people to go to. We love them. They have excellent classes and they support our crazy channel. They haven't gotten rid of us yet, and so we have to thank them. Go check them out, the Sonoran Desert Institute. And of course, who can we not forget? Micah.
Primary Arms.
Where are their optics made?
In the mountains of Rohan.
Which is
literally behind us.
Literally right behind us. Great optics, great price. Go and check them out. And they have everything else you could possibly ever want. And of course, if you're looking to get better at shooting, dry fire is the way to go. Mantis will turn your weapon into a dry fire machine. Go and try it out.
All I gotta say is I actually did put up like the cardboard targets in my garage the other day.
Put it around through your wall?
Well, yeah.
In any case, go check them out. And of course, all the ammunition is provided by AAC. A big thank you to them. In fact, this rifle is actually on loan to us from PSA. And AAC is a subsidiary of, AAC. And on top of that, the company that made this has no affiliation with PSA. So I don't think it's a paid for review. So we can call it a review, right, Micah?
It's a review.
Je m'appelle Michael. Je suis un Famas. Je voudrais un Famas.
Did you actually say something?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
My name is Michael. I am Famas, and I would love a Famas. So there are a couple drills that we're going to run here. And the reason we're going to run these drills is to show the strengths and weaknesses of this particular rifle. Now, if you don't know, when it comes to the military, almost all of your shooting is done semi-auto. This is to conserve ammo, to make sure that you're putting down accurate shots. Suppressive fire is, of course, important, and full auto can be very beneficial, but most of that full auto fire is being done with a belt-fed weapon that has a lot of ammunition and can hold up that sustained rate of fire. So on semi-auto, the trigger is somewhat lacking on the Famas and is lacking on any bullpup style rifle where the magazine is behind the trigger. So we'll be starting with a bill drill, which is going to be 6 rounds on the target. After that, we'll be showing the difficulty of shooting with iron sights at distance. Now, in this particular case, there are adapters that do fit the Famas, but none are in America, so you are just dealing with a peep sights. And so it's not that much fun. Then we'll be showing transitions because with a bullpup, it is a shorter overall length, so there are some advantages there. Then we'll be getting into what we always do, which is tip to butt. Let's get into it. First drill, bill drill. We also have to work the safety on this guy. And if you haven't seen the safety, it is right here. And when you need to actuate it, you have to rotate it out. So it's gonna be a little bit weird.
Weird.
But we're gonna run the safety, dude.
Shooter, are you ready? Stand by. One, 8, 9. So I mean, we can do one Charlie.
One Charlie.
I mean, what? You can run a bill drill on an AR in
sub-second.
Yeah.
Sub-second. So the trigger on this guy is heavy, about 9 pounds long, long reset as well. Makes it very difficult to shoot this thing fast.
Do it again. Let's do a second one.
Okay.
There we go. 1, 6, 7. And that was a really killer group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then
yeah, not bad. All right, shooter, are you ready?
Oh my God, that peep sight.
All right.
There we go.
Are you sure you want to open it up that much?
I do.
Okay. Shooter, are you ready? Stand by.
Oh no, that triggers.
That was 208.
Okay, I shouldn't have opened it up that much.
Okay, so we got 2 Charlie, and then the rest are Alpha. Shooter, are you ready? My bad, dude. Stand by. There you go, 185. Good shooting, dude. That was all Alpha, one leading off to the left a little bit, but
I think for me, one of the reasons it was so much slower than an AR bill drill is I'm used to keeping my head back here on the stock.
Yeah.
But I had to get down in this little pocket and work that trigger.
This little hump is terrible.
It shouldn't be there.
It should not be there. So we've done some bill drill shooting. You can see how tough the trigger is. That's going to be important because all of your military or combat shooting is typically going to be done in semi-automatic.
So
now,
it looks like on average 2.0 and 1.9 splits.
That is slow. Now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead, we're going to move out to an extended distance, and we're going to try this thing at what you'd consider your combat distances for a rifle. I've got it on the smallest aperture on the peep sight. So if you come in right here, there's several different apertures. So right now it's opened all the way. So this giant tunnel that you see right here is for night vision shooting. We have a rear aperture right here that we can put up. That's like for kind of medium. I like it for, I would call it like a combat peep sight. It feels pretty good for your general shooting. But if you need to be more precise, this front peep sight is tiny. And that seems to be working best for distance, of course. This is pretty on par with other peep sights that I've seen. If you look in the back right here, you can change your zero with a bullet tip from 300 to 400 to 500 once you have this thing zeroed out. At the front, you can also do adjustment for windage, but we seem to be pretty on with 55 grain on this guy. At the front as well, if you come up here, this little guy will shift right up, comes erect. That is meant to have a tritium vial in the center, but that never came on the civilian rifles, so that when you have this opened up in the night setting, you can look through that and see that tritium vial for night shooting. Now, all that being said, this can all be ameliorated nowadays with an optic. So, Micah, I'm thinking for this, we should do kind of more of a combat test. So we'll run up to the mound. We'll do 2 shots on steel. And this is 230 right here.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll mount.
And you had that set to the 300 yard zero?
Yeah.
Just under?
Yeah, but I found that if you hold dead on, you should be okay.
Okay, cool.
All right, we'll start safety on.
Dude, that was killer. 774.
Well, looks like it's time to join the French military.
Man.
Mike, when was the last time you shot irons?
Oh, dude, it's been a long
I
time.
do want to say we'd probably be better if we train more in irons, but to be honest, we train all optics. High left. Hit back. Good shit, dude. 890.
Wow.
It should be noted, this is a 19.25 inch barrel, so you have a lot of velocity. The ability of this rifle to have a pretty good trajectory. This isn't a 14.5.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's start standing. Let's go into the prone.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. High right. Impact. Impact. 995.
I'll take it, dude. High left. Impact. Impact. Nice. 718, dude. Crushed me.
Oh, not bad.
Fast, dude. Awesome. Dude, I think we need to take this out to like 500.
Just low right, bear it like an inch. Impact. Impact.
As he stops at 2 impacts, we are good. With the amount of wind, a lot of times with long range, as I said, what are you thinking about, Mike? The Famas. With a lot of these longer range facilities that you typically have, you have some type of wind break, flat range, good trees and stuff. Unfortunately, we have quite a bit of wind out here on the ranch. It's pretty windy. It's pretty windy.
And it changes rapidly.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal out here. But 55 grain isn't great for your longer range shots, but as you can see, it's definitely doable. Took a little bit to kind of find our hold. Think about your typical soldier who has a lot of time on his rifle. He's going to know that hold a lot better than us, with our 1,000 rounds on this guy so far. From long range to short range, talking about a transition drill, it's one of the nice things about a bullpup is you get a very compact rifle for the amount of barrel length that you have. So it's very easy to drive that rifle into target. So right here we have 3 targets that we're going to be shooting, and I'm going to be transitioning between the 3 of them, 2 per target. Cool. So we have 2 alpha line break, Charlie Alpha. I felt that one for sure. But the point is, bringing this rifle between targets, especially with how short it is, it feels very much so like a Mark 18, where it's just easy to bring it up, but you're getting that, M16 barrel length velocity because of the nearly 20-inch barrel. Pretty impressive overall. Very surprised. So with all the shooting done, let's go ahead, let's set up on the table, let's go tip to butt. Very excited to talk about this. So lots of shooting. So we're gonna do our favorite thing, tip to butt, also the Royal Marines' favorite thing. And we're gonna be talking about this rifle from the shooter's perspective. We're not forgotten weapons. We're not gonna go too much in the history other than to say that the Famas was designed around 1967 and entered service in the 70s. So you have to put that into context when you're thinking about how it was designed compared to our modern weapons. We have several different versions. We have the F1 and the G2. Big difference was the type of round that they were made to fire. We'll talk about that in a second. The F1 and the G2 both were chambered in 5.56 by 4.5. We have a 1 in 12 twist barrel when it comes to the F1 version, and then a 1 in 9 when it comes to the G2 version. We have a 19.2-inch barrel, which our ranch hand is very familiar with, and from there we have a very interesting action. It is actually a blowback design, but it is a delayed lever type design. So quite interesting in many ways, and certainly different from what you see nowadays, which is primarily long, short stroke, or a direct impingement type system. Basically, for the most part, a AR-18 design. So with all that being said, we can't talk about the peculiar nature of this rifle without actually getting into it. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start the muzzle device. On this particular variant, we do have a civilian variant, and for whatever reason, this muzzle device will not stay still. I know this is not the case with every variant that is out there or every Famas that was imported into the US, but on ours it just tends to rotate. However, it will not rotate off. That is a mystery that will not be solved today. It is your basic birdcage flash hider, the French cheese version of it. So we do have gas ports all the way around. This is going to be good for flash signature mitigation. However, because we do have ports facing the bottom, as you can see in the shooting that we did when we were close to the earth, you're going to be kicking up dust and dirt. So many rifles, especially military rifles later on, ended up not having vents at the bottom. Not as good as flash suppression, however, that wouldn't kick up that dust when you're firing from the prone. A lot of combat shooting is shot from the prone, so that is probably an improvement that could be made later on. Moving from there, we have the barrel. The barrel is actually free-floated, which is pretty impressive for the time that it was designed. So it's actually a fairly accurate weapon, as you can see from our earlier testing that we did today. And we're not testing for groups specifically. We're simply shooting out really freaking far, out to 560, and it did absolutely fine. I have no qualms about the accuracy of the barrel, nor do I have qualms about the longevity of the barrel. They're very well made. So let's talk a moment about barrel twist rate. On the MAS variants that were imported into the US, we had a 1 in 12 twist. This might seem odd, however, it was a pretty common twist rate on 5.56 rifles until the adoption of the M855, which was a 62 grain projectile. Prior to that, when the US military first adopted the 5.56, almost every projectile was a 55 grain, what you guys know is the M193. The M193 is stabilized incredibly well in the 112 twist barrel and actually is very ballistically advantageous when it strikes human tissue that is unarmored. So the 1 in 12 does a great job in accuracy, does a great job ballistically, and we have a 19.2 inch barrel, which means we're getting pretty good velocity, above 3,000 feet per second, which on a 5.56 is a very devastating velocity to have. You have tons of fragmentation and yaw. There have been no problems with the performance of the Famas, from what I've heard, whether it be in Africa or any of the conflicts that France has participated in, or in its how good it did in Call of Duty, for example. Right, Micah?
Yeah. Yeah, most of France's conflicts nowadays are just throwing poop at parliament buildings.
Oh, you know, the French, the farmers.
Yeah, the farmers are
I kind of understand. I would riot too if I was a farmer, to be
Yeah,
honest.
100%.
Yeah.
I'd ride it if I was French.
They have multiple times. The biggest threat to France is the French. So the round actually used by France is quite interesting. Due to the action, there were many problems with brass being used in this type of action. So France actually specially made steel case ammunition that was used in the French military. And later on, when they had to move to brass, some improvements were made on the G2 version so that it could fire the M855. So this was, of course, problematic as France began to work with other countries, and there began to be supply line issues, and they began to have to use any other allied countries' ammunition. Brass case M855 did not work well on the Famas, which is why ultimately the G2 was designed as an upgrade. Probably a large reason as well that France ultimately, well, in addition to the fact that the company that made the Famas is no longer in business, moved to the 416F, which is going to be the newly adopted rifle of the French military. But as long as you had that good steel case ammunition, it ran. For the civilian versions, you do need to use 223 pressure ammunition. There is a difference in pressure curve, although it might not always be noted. 223 and 5.56 technically are different calibers in terms of pressure curve, and some other slight variances and differences between the two, those two rounds. Did you know that, Micah?
I did, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, it was like actually kind of one of the first things I learned. When I was building my first AR, I was diving deep in the AR-15 forums. I'm like, oh no, can my barrel stand up to 5.56?
That was like old problems. It didn't used to be that every barrel could just handle it, and so there used to be a lot of research on it. But for newer shooters, it might be an interesting footnote. So before we move from the barrel, it should be noted on the military variants, they were made to fire 22mm NATO rifle grenades. Pretty ingenuitive as far as the lockup. We don't have that because we have the civilian version. Maybe in the future we'll go to France and get one somehow. But they could fire rifle grenades. Moving back, we do have a couple of really weird things on the Famas. So specifically, I want to talk about the built-in bipod. This thing feels pretty useless to me overall. So how it is going to be employed is you're going to pull back on the legs. That will allow you to rotate those legs down. But the best part about the Famas is that there is no adjustability in height. The height that you have is what you deal with. So hopefully that works well for you. The height is good. I'm just not a big fan of built-in bipods on rifles. I think that there are better solutions. But you do have them. They are easy to remove as well. So to remove them, you're simply going to pull down, rotate it up, and that will allow you to pop that off. That doesn't sound good, but that's normal.
The most important feature of the bipod is how to remove it.
Honestly, man, to get that bipod off and you have a lighter rifle. The rifle does weigh around 7.95 pounds. Obviously, removing the bipod, that's going to bring the weight down a little bit. From talking to French soldiers, you had a lot of variability in terms of whether or not they were allowed to remove them. But if they could, they did. I have heard a lot of bitching from French soldiers in terms of how much they like the rifle. I think that's likely due to the fact that they were trying out like the Block 2 M4s that we had, which is a very ergonomic, very light recoiling, very accurate rifle. That being said, I really do like the Famas. I think it's important to note how light the recoil is on this rifle. I was very surprised the first time I fired it because on bullpups you often have a pretty harsh recoil cycle. In addition to that, having your face right near the action, it's kind of all accentuated. You hear it a lot more, and you feel like you feel the vibrations from that bolt carrier a lot more. The Famas is a very soft shooting rifle, and I'd be very interested to try it out in really fast semi-automatic, because we can't say that word on YouTube. But I think that's what surprised me most about the Famas, and probably what makes it so nice to shoot. And I think that's really good when you're getting into distance shooting, because it's quite easy to get back on a target. I would say the softness factor is about on par with what you'd see from like the M16. Would you tend to agree with that, Micah?
Yeah, it very much so shocked me. It's very pleasant, very pleasant.
I loved it. That was probably the best part about the FAMAS, was how pleasant the recoil impulse is. Now, moving from that, we do have our charging handle right here. So we'll talk about that in a second, the carry handle. Charging handle is weird. So I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways to actuate it. I've talked to a couple different soldiers about that. But in general, I tend to put my whole hand through in order to charge it. It's not that hard to pinch yourself, so be careful. It is also reciprocating when you're shooting. So the first time I was bracing up, I didn't get myself with it like you would with a SCAR, but I did kind of feel that action move, and I was like, oh yeah, got to be careful about that. So no qualms about that. It reminds me very much so of the G36, and probably in some ways faster to actuate than the G36, because with the G36, you have to rotate that charging handle out as you pull it. Have you fucked with that before, Micah?
Yeah, it's actually the first thing I noted when I picked that up and started messing with it was I think I'd take that over a G36.
I agree. I think it's quicker. It's very smooth to actuate. And when you are pushing back on it, you might notice that rod in there. So a lot of people falsely assume when they pick up the FAMAS that rod is clearly part of the piston system. It's actually just a hollow tube with a recoil spring in it. It's a very simplistic design, very reliable design. It's just odd. So how it works is blowback alone requires a lot of weight. So you need to get some type of mechanical advantage. So they use it by means of a lever delayed system. The problem that I've seen with it, I have no problems with the reliability, with the recoil impulse, which is very pleasant. All my problems with the FAMAS come from the way it unlocks or the timing of the weapon. This might be due to the ammo, and maybe it'd do better with the French steel ammo. But when that thing finally does unlock, the amount of gas that comes back in your face, and you can see it, Michael probably slow-mo some sad thing about how black my face was by the end. There is a psychotic amount of gas coming back in your face when you're shooting this. Even like a Mark 18 with a suppressor, which is one of the gassiest rifles I've ever shot, in some ways, this actually rivals it and is worse. Even firing rapid fire, like 2 to 3 shots, if you're stationary and you're not moving, you'll get gassed out pretty quickly on the FAMAS, which was very surprising to me. I've never seen a rifle unsuppressed gas me out as hard as the FAMAS has. That is a big downside to me. Might seem small, but if you think about the average soldier firing, and within 4 to 5 rounds he's proned out, firing rapid fire for whatever reason, he's getting gassed out by his own rifle, which is going to sting your eyes and kind of make some problems. That's not the best thing to have. I'm not sure why that's an issue. Again, it could be ammunition related, or it could be that it was solved in the G2. But at least on the F1, as far as I'm concerned, that is certainly a significant problem. Now, moving up to the sight rail right here. So we have our carry handle, we have our sight rail, whatever you want to call it. A lot of interesting features to note. We've talked about these a little bit when it comes to shooting long range. I should note that the iron sights are very usable. I think it's a very good design. In many ways, I of course like the M16A2 system better because it was more adjustable in so many ways, and I found it superior. But at the time that this came out, it was fairly good and forward thinking, and I did find those far shots quite easy on these iron sights. I'm sure that, Dine-Hold Reviews would clear it with this guy, no problem, and we just suck in comparison to him. I mean, what did you think about them, Micah?
So I am just not a fan of irons. I understand why people are, but personally, man, I was not thrilled to be shooting irons. And then when I just consistently made hits out at 300, I was pleasantly surprised. I think I overall liked them a lot.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's certainly a good feeling. Very usable. So certainly with an optic on here, better. French military obviously have optics on the rifles. That would be a much more comfortable gun, because one thing that I want to talk about is shouldering this guy. This is the weirdest setup ever. I do want to note that it is easy to change which side it's ejecting from. So if you're left-handed, that you can change which way it's ejecting. So it can, unlike the Steyr-AUG, for example, this can be made left-handed friendly. But with that being said, you see this little bump right here? I hate this bump so much, because kind of right where, especially with armor on, right where you want to put your cheek is right where this is. So it kind of bumps your head up to a position that would be great with an optic. So when I'm shouldering the weapon, because of my armor and everything, I have a tendency to be right on the bump. This could be good if I had an optic right here. That would put me at the perfect height for an optic. However, without an optic, to get down to the iron sights, I actually have to crane my neck forward to get down into this little cranny right here. So I have to like put my head down, which is not great. I have some neck issues, but it's not fun. You get used to it after a while, but I would say shooting this long term, I would be very annoyed by that personally. But again, with an optic, it'd be absolutely perfect. It's just very odd. There's not anything specifically right here that is required. It's actually just a hollow shell right there, so they can have it contoured in any way. So I'm not sure why the, what's a derogatory word for the French? Ben, what's a derogatory word for the French?
I feel like the French just is derogatory enough.
Just call them French?
French.
Just French in general?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why those French designers came up with this. Probably too much wine and cheese or something like that. From there, we do have our controls right here. So on our pistol grip, I do like it quite a bit. I like the angle quite a bit. The safety is weird. I don't think it's bad per se.
The more I used it, the more I didn't hate it, but I also don't love it.
It feels intuitive. So what I mean by that is the safety is right in your trigger guard. So if you want to fire, you have to push it out of the way, which kind of makes sense. Of course, for the AR fanatics out there, we're so used to flicking off with our thumb that feels a lot faster. But I don't think it's a bad thing because you end up getting pretty quick at it. It's just me being a real slut for the AR-15. Now, once you have that rotated out, rotating that back in is a little weird. So after you fire and you need to go back to safe, you're kind of putting your finger back in there and you're pulling it back towards you. It's not terrible. I'm sure as a manual of arms type of thing, you get pretty good at it. But it was certainly odd at first. But like Micah said, you're gonna get quick at it. Now, from there, we're gonna do what we always love to do, which is go set trigger together. So this is always going to be a problem on bullpups, which is trigger. So let's go ahead and feel that. So first off, we have about 3 millimeters of dead play, which is awesome, of course, right, Micah? And then from there, we have mush. We've let off about 9 pounds total.
Mush is a nice way of putting it. It is
not a good trigger. Okay, going on the reset. Long. There's a reset right there. From the reset, about 5 pounds. Bullpup.
I don't know if it's bad, it's slow.
It's slow. It's not as bad as the AUG. The AUG takes the cake as the worst bullpup trigger ever made. But it's not like the Tavor. The Tavor was a great bullpup trigger, but it could certainly be improved. So here's the problem. Where that firing pin is let off is, of course, at the back bolt carrier system. So in order to get that trigger to work with that, there has to be a linkage there. That's always just going to make the trigger a little bit more mushy compared to like an AR-15, an AK, where that safety and that trigger are in line, and that just makes it more mechanically advantageous in order to release that sear. That's just the nature of the bullpup. That's one of the drawbacks you're going to have for having that magazine behind the trigger. That's just life. Now, the French, of course, this being a military rifle, there's going to be some things in here for use with NBC, for, excuse me. So being a military rifle, in order to make it work with CBurn and other stuff, we do have the trigger guard, which can rotate out. Just pop that out, that pops into place. So if you have winter trigger, winter gloves on, or you have a big old CBurn suit on or something, you can still actuate that, and that just rotates back into place and is retained by tension on a pin right there. Fairly simple to use. From there, we have our magazine. So the magazines on the F1 are proprietary. They are 25 rounds. They were originally designed just like the M16 to be disposable, and then of course I was quickly realized that they were not disposable, and that caused problems. They upgraded the magazine and they worked pretty well. We haven't had too many issues with this. Any issues that we've had or stoppages that we've had with the Famas, I would certainly attribute to the fact that we're not using the specialty steel French ammo that is made in wine country or something like that. That's kind of what I imagine French ammunition is made like artisanal, like French ammunition.
They just pump out ammunition and do the little hand can.
Yeah. Magazines, no problem with. So magazines, not really an issue with them other than it being 25 rounds. It's odd. So how it locks in is you have the little over insertion tab and you have a locking tab, and you simply push it straight in, it locks into place. Pretty easy. There's no bolt hold open. So once you have that in, you're going to charge the weapon, or if you're out, then you're going to need to charge a weapon. You're not going to know unless you've been counting your rounds. Characteristic of many weapons in the 60s and 70s, there is no magwell flare, which could easily be corrected. but there is none. So to get your insertion, you really got to make sure that you got your aim right and that you line it up on the lips really well. Magazine release is easy to hit. Simply grab it in order to release it. I know some people have talked about like using their wrist to hit it. Oh shit, that actually works pretty good. Okay, thank you, French soldiers. I've been doing it wrong, but I just did it right. So little tips and tricks from the French right there that actually worked really good. One note that I wanted to mention right here is the safety is ambidextrous. So going to the left, that is semi. Going to the right is semi. On, of course, the military rifle, semi, and then it would be really fast semi, aka select fire. And then at the back right here would be the provision to change it from 3-round burst or auto. 3-round burst being a separate mechanism so that if the 3-round burst broke, that it would just be auto and just work. We can talk about why they did 3-round burst, but that's a conversation for the 70s, so we're not going to get into that, other than to say that that was a cool feature. Moving back from there, we do have a provision for a sling mount right here, and right here we have a rubber belt pad at the back, and we have this horrible hump right here, which I do not believe should be there. So when it comes to a bullpup, a problem is always going to be length of pull. So essentially we have the distance from the buttstock to where our hand is gripping at the grip. There's not a way to change that. So in the case of a bullpup, you're either the size of the average man or it's not going to fit you. So this becomes a problem with armor because you can't really change that, make it adjustable. In the case of me, it fits me really well. I guess I'm the average size of a French man. I don't know, is that good or bad? Point is, length of pull can't be changed. A lot of people look at the bullpup from a simply like a on paper, and they're like, okay, on paper I get a 20-inch barrel, size of like a Mark 18 or an M4. Why wouldn't I do a bullpup? Well, as you can see, from length of pull to the action, sound thereof, gas, trigger, some other things, bullpups have their drawbacks, but they do work in certain situations. However, most countries that have gone to bullpups have now gone back to traditional rifles. So I would say the bullpup is, what's the word for it? Dead. Overall, the Famas is a rifle I really wanted to hate, but I find very hard to hate because it is accurate. The recoil is extremely pleasant. It's overall fairly lightweight for what it is, and you have a lot of velocity from the bullpup form factor. A lot of the problems I have with it can be easily rectified in terms of redesigning the back of the stock, optics, trigger, not a whole lot you can do about it, but it's a good rifle overall. Especially for the time it came out in the 70s, I could certainly see why they have upgraded to a more conventional design like the 416F, but I just can't hate on the Famas. I like it, and here's the thing, it's iconic. It looks really cool. It's in every video game, and it's not often that I get a rifle that's so iconic and that it actually ends up being a good rifle. Like, I can think of a lot of guns that are cool looking and iconic, such as the Spaz 12, that is a huge piece of shit. So it's really cool when a rifle defies my expectations, or a firearm defies my expectations and ends up being good. And that is certainly the case with the Famas. However, there are very few that were ever imported into the country, and as a result, this is probably not a rifle you're ever going to be able to get your hands on, which is a travesty because they are pretty cool in many ways. And it's always cool to have a interesting variant or an interesting design in your collection. So we want to give a big thank you to PSA again for letting us borrow this Famas right here to do a review on it. And I kind of love Famas. Mikey, do you want to give some final thoughts on it too?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you lay eyes on it, you look at the plastic, and it's a little bumpy on the externals and a little rough.
It's got a little bit of herpes.
Yeah, some sharp edges and stuff, and you immediately hate it. And then you go to shoot it, and you feel the action and the recoil, and honestly, you kind of love it. That's my take on it.
Guess you just love the French, man.
I did not say that. Anyhow,
Anyhow, guys, thank you so much for watching. Tons of great content always coming your way. As always, stay training. It's all that really matters. You can do a lot, whether it's a $400 PSA rifle or a $100,000 Famas. Just get training. You're going to be awesome. As always, guys, nothing else for you. Talk to you later. Final thing for you guys, dad advice. Dad advice for today is, you know what? I don't think you're ever really truly ready to have kids. It's kind of something that you end up having an instinct for and falling into.
This is my thank you for doing this one.
Oh yeah, because people are always like, "Oh, I'm not ready."
Well, I need to get the house. I need to have the job. I need to have the dog.
Yeah, you're never gonna be ready, man.
Just pop out, kid.
Yeah, you're never gonna be ready. Have kids, dude. They're awesome. it's kind of, why everything, you're here because you were made. So give that to somebody else. It's important.